Please welcome Stephen Olson.
Good? Okay. Some of you might have been here last month when I began the story about the contents of this box. And I told you how it related to the relationship of my father. But also mentioned that there were other people connected to the contents, and one of those people was Annabel Lee. And Annabel Lee was a little girl who lived across the street. She was a bright girl, bright in spirit and in her eyes. And she was inquisitive. She always had questions. Not just one question, but a whole barrage of questions. And there were times when I wish she hadn't asked so many questions, but her delight in my answers was the reward. One year came the year of her 8th year birthday, and by that time, my parents were playing canasta with her parents. And during one of those canasta nights, it was decided that I would attend Annabel Lee's 8-year princess party. Now, I objected to that, but my mother insisted. She also insisted that I should use my grass cutting money to buy Anna a gift. And I was almost okay with that, except my mother insisted that she had to go with me to help me pick out the gift because I didn't have any experience in buying a present for a young woman. I tried to remind her that it wasn't my ideal to go to the party or to buy a gift. And an 8-year-old was a far distance from a young woman. But my words fell on deaf ears, and that's where I found myself standing in front of the jewelry counter at the local Woolworths. And my mother was transfixed on a heart-shaped locket that she exclaimed would be the perfect gift. I was leaning towards the comic books. And I explained to her that I thought that that would be a bad idea for me to buy that gift for Annabel Lee, and that Archie comic would be a better gift. And my mother told me that I wasn't thinking like a little girl. And again, I reminded her that I was not a little girl, and that if I were to buy a comic, it would be a Marvel Spider-Man or Conan, and definitely not Archie. But again, my words fell on deaf ears. And I found myself leaving Woolworths, $10 poor, with a little box wrapped up all in pretty paper and a little pink bow, just to complete my humiliation. A couple weeks after that, I was dragged across the street to go to a party that I was the only boy invited. So I was completely surrounded by a bunch of little pretty pink princesses. And I endured the high tea, the musical chairs, and the shake it all about dance. Eventually came the time to cut the cake and to open the gifts, and then as the gifts were being opened and paper was being shredded and thrown around, and gifts were being shown, and there were stuffed animals and baby dolls, and even an Archie comic book. And I went over to remind my mother about her choice about the Archie comic. When we heard this highest squeal I had ever heard, you would think a rabbit had been assaulted. And I turned just in time to see Annabel Lee charging towards me, screaming and pleading for me to put the necklace around her neck. And she slammed into me, all hugs. And the only way I could get away from her hugs was to tell her to turn around so I could put the necklace on, and she did. And as soon as that clasp was clicked, she shot off and was completely surrounded by a bunch of princesses all oohing and ahhing. And I took that opportunity to escape and go across the street and spent the rest of the day watching Johnny Quest. Now, for most people, that would be the end of the story, but unfortunately it wasn't. Because you see, Annabel Lee loved that necklace. I remember hearing her mother tell my mother at one of their canasta nights that it was the best gift she had ever gotten. She never took the necklace off. She even wore it when she slept. Even if she took a bath, she never took the necklace off. And so I reminded my mother the next day what a terrible choice she had made. And that one of these days, I'm just going to lose it. Because every time I would go outside, there would be Annabel Lee. Even if I was able to sneak out the house the back door, I'd get this feeling that somebody was following me. I'd turn around, and there was Annabel Lee. And I told my mother, it's just one of these days I'm going to have to yell at her, tell her to stop following me around like some lost puppy dog. And my mother just said that I was too much of a gentleman to break a little girl's heart. And eventually Annabelle would see that I was just too old for her, and then I would miss the attention. And I told her that kind of attention I didn't need, especially with the guys all singing the Cradle in the Treetop song. But now that I look back on it, I see that my mother was right, because there would come a time when Annabel Lee was no longer there, and I did miss that attention. I missed those bright eyes and smile and all those questions. And I guess in order for you to completely understand how Annabel Lee is connected to this content, it's like most stories. Most stories are intertwined with other stories. And so another person that is also intertwined with the contents of this box is Alan Landry. And I'll have to tell you about Alan Landry next time. Thank you.